if you are a socialist, you've deemed the system to be morally deficit. As a utilitarian, you're saying like this is negative utility, this is bad. So you perpetuating that system is not socialist. It goes against the ethic that you're trying to like fulfill. So like if you don't become a landlord and enrich yourself on the backs of others, it's like you can't be both a capitalist and a socialist at the same time. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but people just throw that comic at you over and over again.
I don't know how to reconcile all of his behavior.
Well, and another problem too is that like he almost turns into like a type of, I don't know if you say like I was gonna say like Descartes' demon, maybe not necessarily that extreme, but like
how do you know you're capable of making reasonable assessments about such a thing?
So what if we're going Descartes' evil demon?
Yeah,
okay.
I am actually.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, wait, hold on.
Okay, that was.
Why? I don't understand. All right, well, you've come back from the grave once more.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you
I'm
want to
not
chat
streaming again. I just want to say that. So I'm not here looking looking for clout for my Twitch channel or something. I'm here solely because I saw the Vaush stuff and nothing has changed here. It's exactly what I expected. And I mean, I talked to Vaush about this, 2 years ago, with that discussion with Hassan and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then last year I talked to him and I basically got him because he's a high performer, like an epistemic anti-realist. So he literally believes that truth and knowledge is all subjective and that it's just a game of power. So
kind of to be since we're doing philosophy talks, I the only pushback I would give you is I don't think he's an epistemic anti-realist. I think he just says things that he doesn't realize would lead him to epistemic anti-realism. That's how I feel. Like I don't think he would like.
That's what I thought. But he had a discussion with Perspective Philosophy after your debate, where he seemed to just completely endorse epistemic anti-realism. So he's faced a lot of pushback from it, and he just keeps doubling down. Like he will just completely bite the bullet.
How do you know what your preference is?
Well, I think that a preference is a cognitive process. So whatever preference I arrive at must necessarily be the one which I adopt.
Have you ever encountered what's called the Frege-Geach embedding problem?
We are very, very far beyond my my realm of expertise here. No, I have not.
Is he like an epistemic anti-realist like I am? Where I'll say like
no, but you still push back on companions and guilt.
Sure.
You don't seem to embrace the companions and guilt and say, oh yeah, it's all just how we feel, bro. Like
I'll make that as like a top level argument, but then past that I'll be like, we have to make all the rest of these reasonable. But I won't carry that through to everything, so that if anybody challenges me on anything, I'll just say like, oh well, bro, it's all anti-realism, get fucked or whatever, something like that. Yeah.
No, but when push comes to shove, Vaush's solution is just to push it all the way back to, well, I'm just doing what I can to make socialism happen, and then whatever I do, as long as that's the goal, then that's fine. It all comes down to how, and it grounds out in how it makes him feel. Sure. And he basically said, like, if you don't agree with me, then I might as well just kill you
because you're an enemy. Yeah.
The cup is red is true if it is actually okay. There's another theory of truth. It could be something is true if and only if it makes me feel good, right? My question to you would then be, well, which of those theories of truth should I adopt?
It depends on which moral system you subscribe to. If you subscribe to a different one and that causes me harm, I could just like kill you.
That theories of truth are moral statements.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just the stupidest shit. Like it's
well, here, let's be okay. So I'm gonna hold you to a higher standard in terms of, because obviously I'll say that or whatever. But more clearly, when you say well, actually, here, let's back up 1 second. Okay, so for people listening, okay, so when we say like epistemology, we're talking about like the study of like truth, or like what is truth, or how can we know what truth is?
What is knowledge?
Yeah, what is knowledge? More. Sure, it's better. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like the study of knowledge, essentially, broadly speaking. And we say that somebody is an epistemic anti-realist. In a broad sense, we're kind of saying that this person is claiming almost that there can be no knowledge, or we can't truly know anything, kind of.
Not necessarily. Well, I mean, ultimately, yes, I agree with you, but it's probably just better put as there's no correct system of knowledge.
Sure. Okay. And when we say when we say there's no correct system of knowledge, we don't mean that this person might think there might be competing logics or whatever, where one might be better than the other, something like that. But this is a person that would say like maybe causality isn't real or something, or they might go like really, really far off the deep end, where like, oh, like nothing, literally everything is absurd.
Yeah, and it usually boils down there's no fact of the matter about there being a system of meaning or a system of truth. It all just basically comes down to how I feel about it. And this is what he very blatantly says. If it helps me, then I will say that is true. That's just the way that he operates. And I mean, I
don't know if this makes sense, but can you be an epistemic non-cognitivist?
I mean, yeah, that's roughly usually what I mean by epistemic anti-realism.
Okay, gotcha.
And so, I'm not going to sit here and pretend there aren't people, in the literature, but there are people in the literature that defend every single view under the earth, right? And I mean, obviously, X amount of people, not believing in it shouldn't just completely discredit the argument, right?
Sure.
But I mean, it is the backwaters of philosophy.
Sure, it's something to think about. If you assert something and everybody in a field disagrees, and you should assert it cautiously, right? So I might say, like, if I'm an anti-realist on this, like 50% of philosophers disagree, then that should give you pause or whatever. Like, be careful.
Right. It's like I still consider myself a scientific anti-realist, but I approach that because I used to be a hardcore scientific realist, and it was only after a number of years and studying, because that's all I really took. That's sort of what my institution is really known for, is that area. And it was only after, and actually speaking with some of the leading anti-realists, that I came to adopt that, and I can fully understand why people would be skeptical of it. Right?
Real quick,
argumentation.
Yeah, so somebody in chat just said that this is such a huge fucking stretch from I'd rather have effective misinformation on my side than the enemy side, holy shit. So I think what Rem is referring to is a more detailed conversation that Vaush had with Perspective Philosophy, not just the conversation that he had with me, I believe.
Yeah, there is a video on my channel. Actually, if you watch that video, all that money goes to that editor. It doesn't go to me. So help out a poor editor if you want to watch it. It's like, I called it takedown of Vaush. It was brigaded by his community, so it has a lot of dislikes. But I basically break Perspective Philosophies in that video. We break down that discussion that I have with him, where he basically ends up asserting a position like whether or not the Holocaust happened is just a matter of how you feel about it, and it's basically a game about power. And
I understand truthfully he honestly said that
he means that it's like the victor writes the history books, but that's not what he meant. He meant literally whether or not it happened depends on ultimately how you feel about it.
That when do you mean when you define the Holocaust, like the actual events that took place, or just the definite
the actual event that occurred?
There's no truth. Nothing is objective. Nothing is true, or it's all relative to what someone wants.
Yeah,
everything.
But I do think you can make empirical statements about the world.
That depends on you.
Wait, yes, the morality of the Holocaust depends on your subjective.
Whether it happened.
Oh, whether it happened? Sure, if you have a different definition of truth, then yeah. But if a person
can't say that they're wrong, they're just in a different framework.
Oh no, well, I don't have to say that they're wrong. All I have to do is convince them.
Right now, you are basically saying that.
I would disagree with them. I would try to convince them off that point.
Yeah, you would disagree with them, but you have to acknowledge from this,
Yes, I acknowledge that. I've always acknowledged that. Yeah, it's about power.
You're in a state of complete nihilism about the world. No one's position is more justified than another.
Inherently, no. Correct.
Wow. Okay. So you're literally in complete. So actually, right now, if I wanted to, I could flip a coin, and if it lands heads or tails, I'm correct about this issue, and you have no way to refute what I just said.
Empirically, no. But I could argue that that's dumb.
Wow. Well, doesn't matter. I mean, if you just acknowledge all you do is just scream at people to make you feel good. Fine.
Wait, no, I don't. Wait, I don't scream at people.
So you don't care about truth in the world, I guess.
Wait, yeah, I do. I care about my truth in the world.
Yeah, you care about how you feel.
Yeah, yes, because all moral positions are downstream of our subjective emotional preferences. How many times do I have to refrain this?
No, it's crazy to me hearing you say it. That's all.
Okay, fuck. I'd have to listen to it, but I have a really hard time believing that's a really extreme position to take.
You can watch that video. I understand that it's extreme, and that's why Perspective Philosophy talked to him 2 days ago, and he pushed him on this, and he doubled down on it. He doubled down on the, but that just naturally follows from epistemic anti-realism, right? That is a natural consequence.
Yeah, I guess it just seems like such a
no objective system of knowledge. Then yeah, if you are a non-cognitivist or an expressivist about knowledge and truth, then it naturally follows that whether or not an event happened in the world, what we want to consider an objective fact in the world, does literally flow from how you feel about it. And people will say that, oh, well, that's so uncharitable. I mean, literally watch the video, watch the discussion he had with Perspective Philosophy. If you think it's uncharitable, I mean, that just sort of proves my point, because that's how absurd the position is. But that's what follows from it. You push him, because I pose, companions in guilt argument to him, which basically says, if you don't believe there's any ought claims that have a definitive truth value, what we ought to do just depends on how someone feels about something. I then extend that to theories of truth and knowledge. Why ought I choose this theory of truth? Why ought I choose this theory of knowledge? Why ought I consider this true or this false? And again, he says, well, it's the same thing. It works the same way as it works in the moral case. It's all dependent on how you feel about it. Truth claims, knowledge claims are dependent upon your expressions and feelings, or they're about power. Whoever's in power determines it. So it becomes this relativistic notion. And he just doubles down on that. I understand people are like, oh, you couldn't possibly think that. Just watch what he said. It's,
Yeah, it's hard, because I want to be charitable, but then I'll watch him do. So as part of the video I was watching today, he was very clearly saying I don't believe in this particular thing. I would never say this, but it's something that I listened to him say verbatim, and then he'll argue around it in a way that's consistent with what he's opposing now. So this is, and I still don't know what he thinks about this in terms of do you think it's ethical or even good to propagate misinformation if it furthers your cause? Because it seems like he is very stringently defend that point of view, but then when he talks about it in detail, well, I don't actually believe that. I'm not sure what he thinks about that right now. I don't know. I just don't know. I feel like he thinks it's okay because he talks around it in a way that it feels yeah, you truly do believe this. When we brought up the Breonna Taylor stuff, and I said well, a lot of people lie about whether or not she was killed in bed or not, and he's well, does that even matter so long as the end story is the same or whatever? It's well, yeah, one thing happened and one thing didn't, but it seemed like he was very confident in that he didn't care what the facts of the case were. So yeah, I was kind of confused about that.
No, but it all, yeah, I mean, the explanation is just that he only cares about what's going to benefit him. That's why he says, if you disagree with me and I can't convince you otherwise, then I might as well just kill you. I mean, that is something he literally says.
I mean, there are plenty of higher order things that could be fucking with our ability to understand truth.
Yes, that's true. Right. Okay, so if you acknowledge that, and you're a moral anti-realist, so there is actually no choice of the matter which theory of truth is right, then you also acknowledge that any empirical statement I make is also arbitrary.
I mean, I think it would be arbitrary insofar as we would have to disagree on the meaning of truth, but I think that most people have subscribed to the idea that truth means something that can be empirically verified. If a person disagreed with that, I would have to kill them. I'm going to keep going back to that argument a few times, so I hope you don't mind hearing it. That's my answer.
I don't understand how people can then be oh, well, he doesn't actually, I mean...
Yeah, because when I asked him about, establishing the facts of the matter, and I'm well, my goal when I disseminate information is to make sure that I'm truthful. That's paramount. That's one of the most important things to me. And he said, oh, well, my goal is stopping fascism. It's oh, well, that's...
Yeah, exactly. If that's what you're, but that follows naturally from epistemic anti-realism. If that is what you feel good about, and that's what you want your end to be, and there's no objective end in life, there's no thing that we ought to pursue that is objectively good in itself, then it naturally follows that any hypothetical thing that you ever you can dream up can be a legitimate end. And for him, that is pursuing socialism. But equally well, I mean, this is why, I mean, Perspective Philosophy said this. He said he's basically like a Nazi. And I pushed back. I said, well, no, he isn't a Nazi. He doesn't hold Nazi beliefs. But he is, in a sense, just as justified as a Nazi within his own system. Perspective Philosophy was not calling Vaush a fascist, okay? He is saying that when you go down that type of position,
your position starts to essentially entail everything, if I'm interpreting you right, respective philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, like, essentially what I'm saying, I'm not saying that he's, like, actually, like, labeled himself a fascist. What I'm saying is that by adopting a view that made power relations the primary methodology of truth, as in there is no truth, there is only power, the only thing that differentiates him between a fascist is the arbitrary label from which he gives himself. It's the fact that, like, essentially, what I would say, I mean, not only will his ethical conclusions be exactly the same, because I would say fascism's fundamentally based upon notions of might makes right anyway, but that the only thing that differentiates his position and their position is the fact that he asserts that it is different, that he asserts that it is better, and that we should accept it.
But what would you say to someone like I'm sure people get angry and say, well, look, but his ethical conclusions aren't going to lead, like, his, he calls himself a socialist, right? So the way that he interacts with the world is still going to result in different outcomes than a fascist would.
Well, I'd say that that is very ifs and ands, if ifs and ands were pots and pans, I think the reality is that the only reason that you think they're going to result in different scenarios is because you've made assumptions about what he will and will not assert. He calls himself a socialist, which inspires, a hegemonic notion of, an identity, which can then be associated with certain belief systems, but it also gives him a position of, ideological power from which to assert whatever he deems to be true or not under that brand of of socialism. So if he takes his position as like a socialist leader, and which is kind of doing by having a platform with a considerable amount of notions, he says, if my arguments make your dick hard, then follow me and stick around. That's all it's about. It's a hegemonic organization used to force an ideology, and that's pretty much identical with what fascism was, which is why I kind of brought it up. I mean, it's kind of Gramsci's position.
Oh, so basically they are no longer concerned with what is actually true, because truth isn't really a thing to them in the way that ordinary people conceive of it. It is merely, if you feel what I feel, jump on board, and then we're going to rhetorically smash anything that stands in our way. Certainly within his own system, because he's a self-proclaimed moral anti-realist. I think you also are, but you are willing to bite that. But he then takes it to the extreme and brings it to truth and to objective knowledge as well. And he says that's all dependent on how you feel about it. And this just naturally flows from the fact that, he doesn't take the time to do any sort of education on the topic. People will undoubtedly call me gatekeeping again, but I've been talking about this for years now, that these streamers who, how many people watch his streams now?
Over 10,000, I think, when he was doing his live streams.
Yeah, he's having a huge effect on the people watching him, and and people have linked me to his subreddit before, and there are literally top-ready comments saying, "Oh, well, morality doesn't matter."
Yeah.
It's convenient when you were talking about the Rittenhouse stuff. All of a sudden, the law is what matters here. It's the law that matters. Morality is just, it's total bullshit.
Yeah.
It's all about the law. Suddenly, what is correct in the law is now what matters to socialists.
Well, I guess technically that is consistent, right? Because it would be consistent with an episode of Get to Realize.
Right? So,
one of the things that frustrates me the most, and maybe actually Vaush is the big brain the whole time, and I'm just misunderstanding, because I would never assume somebody would have that position in earnest, because people always fixate on my obsession with consistency, but I find that kind of strange, because if you don't have any consistent way of talking about something, you basically have nothing. You necessarily become absurd, in my opinion.
If I am Vaush, I say, well, why does consistency matter? Does consistency help me reach my end? No.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's exactly his argument. He's like, well, would I want a Nazi to be consistent? And I'm like, well, and he's like, well, yeah, so maybe if they're inconsistent, it's better for me, so I don't necessarily care if people are consistent or not. I just want them to do actions to serve my end. And I'm like, that's okay. That's very interesting. It feels like you lose a lot by making that sacrifice. I think we can convince people not to be Nazis, rather than just say there's literally no way to know anything about anything or make any meaningful statement about anything ever. But
yeah, so it naturally, not only does he think that truth just becomes something relative, but rules of inference itself, modus ponens, if
all of it becomes arbitrary, right? Yeah,
all of it's arbitrary. You can choose whatever fucking logical rules of inference that you want. You can choose any of them. He literally said whether or not 2 + 2 = 4 is a matter of power.
It is not a matter of objective fact.
A statement like 2 + 2 = 4, right? There are multiple theories of truth. Something can be true because it's actually existing in the world, right? Which is probably what you view truth as. You know, the cup is red is true if it is actually okay. There's another theory of truth. It could be something is true if and only if it makes me feel good, right? My question to you would then be, well, which of those theories of truth should I adopt?
It depends on which moral system you subscribe to. If you subscribe to a different one and that causes me harm, I could just like kill you.
That theories of truth are moral statements.
All of thought is just power grabs between people who can decide subjectively whether or not their positions are better than others.
Power grabs.
Unironically,
wow.
In some cases,
the truth of whether the Holocaust happened, a power grab.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Well, with that, I'm gonna peace out because I've never.
You
heard
didn't make a single argument. You.
I did. What you've just said really makes my
literally yes. You're fucking triggered, dude. You're a snowflake.
No, do I sound triggered?
Yeah, you are. Dude, somebody with your education can't come up here and even make a counter argument. Oh, dude, you're so fucking dumb. Get out of here. Holy shit.
Doing some like intuitionist appeal to like some differing logical system. He thinks that mathematical statements are just dependent on, you know,
I've had
power.
I don't know if you've had any engagement with this while studying philosophy. I've had two people, one was a scientific researcher and another guy was a historian, and they both actually pushed back so hard against, they get really triggered, the historian guy especially gets really triggered whenever people use the term history is written by the victors. And his response, basically, he wrote me this whole thing. He's like, well, actually, history is written by historians. And, you know, there may be some bias in some areas, but there are, like, lots of people that largely do their best to preserve good data, which was interesting because I never figured that out before. I never really thought about it before. But, like, one of the big examples I had was, like, during the Soviet Union, there was a lot of, like, suppression of information, and there was a lot of kind of, like, cooking the books on certain things. But there are a lot of scientists individually that were like, hey, this is important, it needs to be preserved. And there were people actively working, like, as individuals against those systems to preserve data that later ended up being important, which I thought was interesting. I guess kind of pushes back a little on that notion that like, oh, well, history is whatever the leading superpower says history is.
Well, I mean, like, so I agree to an extent on certain topics, but like on science, for example, it was written by the victors because it was written by the scientists of the day, right? Or like in topics of like indigenous history, you know, indigenous history was largely written by Jesuits and missionaries who came overseas and documented their firsthand accounts. And, you know, their primary interest was, you know, evangelizing these new primitives who they deemed to be savages. So they leave out these, you know, very important cultural distinctions that exist. And
yeah,
so
for sure.
Now it's a process of modern. So
I'm definitely sure that process of selectively passing information, I think that definitely happens. But then also on the other hand, our process of uncovering those things is still a process being done by the victors as well, kind of, right? Like hopefully
well, yes, there's a correction. There's a natural correction that is going to occur as you recognize the past mistakes. So now we are able to write, you know, very you know, scholarly studies of stuff in the history of science or in the history, you know, you bring in different pedagogical techniques in indigenous history, you consult actual elders, whatever field you're talking about. So it improves. So, but there is still that history that existed. Something actually did happen. It is in a matter of fact what happened. The world does not actually change. The past does not change depending on who's in power.
Yeah, this is very, very strange that like the idea that, and I think there are some like obscure forms of, I don't know, metaphysics or whatever, that like when you close a door, if a sentient creature isn't perceiving something, it ceases to exist or something like that. But I think ordinarily that seems to be a pretty silly position.
I mean, like even I am slightly sympathetic. Well, you know, I'm like sympathetic, you know, towards the idea that language structures our world. But I would never for a second suggest that the actual external world as it really exists is something that just is especially dependent on something honestly as arbitrary as power. That like at least on feelings it sort of makes sense, because if we look at the actual way that we seem to approach the world, I mean, our emotions and how we feel about it seem to have a tangible effect. But like if there are two people on an island, I mean, like it just seems so arbitrary, power as this thing that dominates all knowledge.
Sure.
It just seems like empirically wrong about the way that we experience the world. but again, like this doesn't surprise me. This is what I've thought to be the case about Vaush for a long time, and it's why I wish people would. But I don't know how you really saw. Like he basically runs, I feel, like a cult. Like the people who follow him are a cult and are not going to.
Yeah, but unfortunately, you can argue maybe that most online content creators have a similar thing.
But I would even say that, like, I think I probably would have said the same about you, but it seems like every 6 months or so you run a fucking gulag and, you know, siphon off 50% of your audience.
Yeah.
Every 6 months. So I don't know if it would. There are definitely people who are. You know,
some communities hold their creators more responsible than other communities, for sure. Just depends on the type you try to build. You know?
Yeah. But I mean, it's worse with Vaush, I think, because I mean I think he's also just a bad person, and I wanted to bring this up on stream, and I do want to call him out on this because I brought this up many times before because he has made very vicious ableist attacks towards me. And I've tweeted, you can go on my Twitter and look at this, and I am calling him out on this because this is the consequence of having a moral system like his, is he's able to justify doing horrible shit to people because it's just convenient, you know, for his brand or for pursuing socialism.
Are you ready for the real meme? From my subjective philosophical position, I think that Rem should be deplatformed because he makes philosophy seem so insufferable that he's doing measurable harm to our ability to influence discourse. That's my hot take. Actually, platforming Rem is a moral wrong because he is that fucking insufferable. That is actually true for me? Yeah, that is absolutely true for me. No, I'm not joking. I actually think it would be moral to deplatform him. Rem gets like super triggered about ableism because he's autistic and he doesn't understand why his behavior makes everyone hate him, so he assumes that it all like is downstream of them being ableist. And it's not just because he's insufferable and there's no justification for it. Your position as you described it was incoherent? I really don't think so. Also, I'm not like gonna be super hard on this, but it's some bitch shit to complain about this. This is funny as fuck. Who gave him to the... Wait... Rem literally spent like a year and a half calling me like a rapist sexual predator. No shit! If people have a different definition of truth that just applies to what they believe is true, then yeah.
I mean, the attack that he gave was like a year ago. And I guess, you know, it was the year ago. And we are very forgiving with Vaush for things that he did, you know, 2 years ago. So maybe this is just another case of where we just have to, you know, forgive him this time. But... it's, you know, and it might be considered petty, but at the same time, this has a direct effect on his audience. I mean, people look up to him, people respect him, people see him as a leader, people will see him as a role model. And if this is someone who has a moral system that is completely arbitrary, pulled out of his ass, and he is actively doing harmful things, this is going to influence the people that are watching his content. And I think that is genuinely dangerous. I think from anyone's perspective. And again, I don't really know what the solution is to dealing with that other than to just come on here and try to call him out on it. And I know a lot of people will try doing that.
This is gonna sound like I'm very full of myself, but I think that he does watch a lot of my stuff. So I guess like what I imagine is probably going to happen is if he gets enough pushback on this, is he's probably gonna stop talking about this for a while. I think he like unfollowed my friend on Twitter again and everything. So he's probably gonna like stop talking about this for a while and not mention it. And then like in 3 months, when he talks about it in the future, he's like mysteriously just gonna have the exact same view as me. That's my guess of what's gonna happen. So hopefully, I guess like it's already kind of started that process. Because that seems to have happened quite a bit in the past. So, yeah.
I mean, he doesn't respond to like legitimate criticism, like that are actually, I think, in good faith. Like I posted very detailed. Like he won't apologize for his actions ever. I mean, fuck. It took him however fucking like 6 months for him to apologize publicly for sexually harassing someone who was disabled. Seriously, it took him 6 fucking months of me pestering him on Twitter before he gave a public apology. 6 fucking months. Like that is crazy to me. And he still hasn't apologized to me for, you know, for making these ableist attacks on me. So I don't expect him to change. I mean, I try to give him the benefit of the doubt. And in my mind, I'm like, because I'm also a socialist, right? So, you know, praxis, you know, everyone's like praxis. We just have
Praxis is on Twitter, my dude.
Yeah, exactly. We just have to embrace it. You know, people have different methods for bringing people over to the left. Maybe he's converting people on the right, but continually he makes the left look bad by, you know, engaging in anti-intellectualism, you know, engaging in poor decisions, and then fucking having these absolutely garbage tier philosophical and you know he's never read anything on it. And that's probably the thing that annoys me the most, is the fact that he has the time now to sit, engage with these questions that he's dealing with, you know, pick up an intro to philosophy. He has the time to do that. He has the time and the money to be able to do that right now. But I don't know if he's just too lazy. I don't know. I mean, if you know, he can watch audiobook or listen to audiobooks. He can watch, you know, lecture streams on it, but he's shown no effort to actually engaging with the material. And that always bothers me. I mean, you have people come on. I've criticized you for this as well. I mean, at least you gave, you read Bertrand Russell, right?
Yeah.
So at least you did something. But it's just, I don't know what the solution is here for. It's, and, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was wondering before I came on, I was half expecting him to join the voice call like he did last time, to come on and defend himself. But
I think he's actually kind of bothered by this most recent shit. So
yeah, I think because I think he knows that he's really fucked up and exposed himself. I don't think there's any way for him to actually defend himself on these grounds. I can't imagine anything that he could say that would, like, can you, I can't think
no,
of
I
any-
agree, and this is part of like, and everybody says I'm too harsh in a conversation, but this was part of why my conversation felt so unreal with him, because like, and you know, like people get mad at me for using rape analogies and stuff all the time, but like people, like the implications of what he was saying were truly unbelievable to me. Like at the level it was like, I don't believe that you actually could possibly do this. Like the idea that it's morally permissible to do something if someone else was going to do it anyway, like no way does any normal non-sociopathic human being believe this. This is an
do
insane
people actually
statement.
get mad at you for that, for giving examples?
Well, yeah, because the analogy that I really wanted to give, because like we can get to the heart of that real quick. Like let's say that you go into some fucking restaurant and there's a girl and the requirement of the restaurant is one time a day, like a customer rapes her. If someone else is going to rape her, can you just do it anyway and it's okay? Like, and the obvious answer is like, well, no, what the fuck? That's horrible. But like
people should read just basic like intro bioethics papers.
Sure.
Like, it gets worse than that.
Yeah,
you know?
sure, yeah.
This is the whole point. You're supposed to take it to the extreme.
Yeah, just to see if you believe it's in the actual concept. Yeah, instead of like these really dumb, like weaker examples. Because it's like, and if you believe it, like then just own the hypothetical. Like then say, yeah, sure. But like, man, like the
idea that just because someone
would have done something anyway, it's moral for you to do it. Yeah.
I wonder what he thinks about Canada creating military equipment and selling it to Saudi Arabia that's then used in the Yemeni war, because that's actually Trudeau's justification.
That the US would do it anyway?
Saying, yeah, someone else is going to build it anyway, so why don't we? And we get the jobs. So is he saying that he supports imperialism by Canada in constructing military armaments that are then used to kill Yemeni children? That'd be a very interesting thing to commit yourself to. But I guess if that's what his moral position is, then so be it.
That just seems unreal to me. Like, and this is why I'm saying that it's like, I feel like, because I try to be charitable. I feel like he doesn't actually believe it, but maybe he just kind of got like caught up in the argument. But then like every time he has a chance on like another show or another platform to like walk it back or to like rephrase it a little bit, it seems like he just kind of doubles or triples down. And then we end up in areas where I can't truly believe that somebody actually thinks that. That's just insane to say. But
oh yeah, I don't think he believes it. I don't actually genuinely.
I don't know now. I'm not sure.
No. I don't think anyone is a genuine epistemic anti-realist. They
well, nobody lives their lives that way, right?
When they can't justify their positions.
Yeah.
Because the easiest thing to do in a position is just to completely double down on everything. Epistemic anti-realism is to just bite the bullet on every single argument ever.
And you know what? This is to trigger the fuck out of you. This is why the way that my approach to life is I just assume that that anytime you have these contradictions in people's systems and they try to appeal to other systems, what's really happening is they're just egoists and they don't want to admit it. I think at the end of the day, everything becomes self-serving. We try to find like other logical systems to obfuscate that, but then when they fail, we say, well, we don't care about logic anymore. But I think like the consistent approach is just like, oh, like somebody will do something that benefits them or satisfies them. And that's basically like explanatory of everything.
Egoism is still a form of moral cognitivism. It is still like egoism is like, look, I don't like egoism, right? I think egoism is garbage, and we've discussed that before. But this is so beyond egoism that it's like, I'm sure,
well, but that's the thing is that like I don't know if he's actually a non-cognitivist or if that just is because he can't reconcile the current differences. So it's easier to say I don't believe in logic rather than to say I'm irrational.
He refuses to engage at all with the material, so he just speaks out as he's an anti-vaxxer about these types of things. He refuses to give any sort of effort to reading on any of these issues because I don't know what it is. He's either lazy or he's just incompetent at doing it. And if he's so incompetent that he can't do the basic research to determine whether his positions lead him to these crazy fucking conclusions, then you should not be a content creator with tens of thousands of people watching you.
Or just don't talk about morality.
or just don't talk about more. I mean, I disagree. I think anyone who talks about politics should be basically informed on this, But yeah, especially when he literally will talk about morality on stream. It's a common issue on Twitch. I mean,
sure. That was why I was trying to get away from the morality discussion, especially because he has the like I remember being in high school when I tried to like think of morality, like he has like the very, very, very naive understanding of consequentialism, like or like utilitarian, like that very basic, like, well, if I have to do a whole bunch of bad things, as long as one good thing comes out of it, it's worth it. And it's like, oh, like that's so short-sighted. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he comes up with it in real time. Right?
Yeah, that's something I noticed too.
He hasn't put any effort or thought into it. He pulls it out of his ass when it's convenient. Whatever's going to justify him winning the debate, that is ultimately what is going to be convenient for him at the end of the day. But I think that's what a ton of people do. It just so happens that because like the solution here is to just go, you know what? You've given me some serious consideration. I'm going to look into this a bit.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I don't mind that. I don't think it's bad. Like there are times where people will, especially over my self-defense thing, there are times where people will challenge me on things, and sometimes we'll get down to an area and it's like, I haven't thought about this before. Like I'll give you some answers that I'll think about, but I honestly don't know. I have to spend more time thinking about this. But like rather than like trying to die on a hill that you just constructed, like that seems like a really tall order. Like just say you don't know and like think about it for a while. Like there's no harm in that. Other than you look bad, I guess, because you don't know everything. But
yeah, that's something I've learned, and like I feel like because I started coming on these streams when I was 15 when I first came on stream. No, I was 16. And I think that since then, that is something that I've learned, which is that you don't have to be correct. I mean, ultimately everyone's going to shit on you anyway, so it doesn't matter. Just do your, be willing to acknowledge that this is something you need to do further reading on before you commit yourself to the position. But people are just not willing to do that because they're too afraid of
looking
how that's
like they don't know everything.
Yeah.
It becomes all about the aesthetic rather than. Oh, that happened in that conversation too. It was really frustrating that he admitted. What was the question? I asked him about like it either had to do with like how you live your life or some charitable thing or whatever, and I asked him like, oh, like why do you do this or whatever, and then or he asked me and I said why, and he was like, oh, like I do it for the aesthetic, and I'm like, wait, well this isn't comparable to what I said, and he's like, oh, well I don't actually mean I do it for the aesthetic, I mean like my aesthetic is being like a good person or whatever, and I'm like, wait, hold on, like what are you talking about? Oh yeah, it was okay. It was a conversation of like, so I try to avoid like sponsors that I think are like a little like morally not okay. So like I try to avoid like gambling sponsorships. I try to avoid like the whole CS:GO gambling thing. Like it's generally something I don't feel okay about. So it's something I try to avoid. And then his response to me was like, oh yeah, like I try to avoid a lot of sponsors too. It's not part of my.
Subject your audience to like 20 viewings of like a single Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fucking.
That's not gambling. Hey, hold on. I didn't say I avoided all.
Worse than gambling.
What? Fuck you. I didn't say I avoided all sponsorships, but I try to avoid things that I like think are like morally reprehensible. Like I really don't like gambling. It's something I try to avoid. I don't like the CS:GO gambling shit. And then, but after I said that, he was like, "Oh yeah, I don't take sponsors either because I think it hurts my aesthetic." And when he said that, I was like, wait, why are you comparing these two things? I don't avoid this because it hurts my aesthetic. It's something I think is like morally not okay. So that's why I try not to do it. And he's like, oh, well, that's what I meant actually. Like, I just mean my aesthetic is like being like a good person or whatever. And I was like, wait, what? And it triggered. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it triggered the fuck out of me.
And you've turned down, and I, for my part, have turned down every sponsorship because
why?
It's not a part of my aesthetic. I don't want to.
Okay, wait. And then he said afterwards that I was trying to like trick him or trap him when I got irritated that he did that, but whatever.
Yeah, but that's also what his supporters was, and that's like when I had that discussion with him, they say, "Oh, you're just misrepresenting him. You're being uncharitable."
Yeah.
I mean, no, well, no, maybe. So there's two options here. Either he does genuinely believe the views that he has, or he just doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, and he's talking out of his ass.
Yeah, and that's my problem. Like, if I'm, because I would like to think, at least in my conversation with him, I'm making a really big effort to try to figure out what the fuck he means. And if I'm making this huge effort and I still can't figure it out, I mean, like, I don't think I'm being uncharitable. Like, there must be some problem in communication or something here. Like, you have to admit exists. Yeah.
Also, can I ask, because I never caught up on this on the Rittenhouse stuff. What was his position on that? Did he think that you shouldn't be allowed to shoot back in self-defense? I don't want to get into it.
I don't even know what the fuck his position was at the end of this. I'm not sure. And I don't want to say it for fear of misrepresenting him. I remember that I thought his position was insane. So I tried to I think at one point during the argument, because I asked, he was trying to say, so I'm going to give like my side. So maybe if you think I'm misrepresenting, you can always look at your side. But like at some point, there were multiple shootings that happened after a first shooting. And I said like, well, don't you think he has a right to defend himself here? And Vaush was like,
gunshots before the incident.
Well, I'm saying even after the first shooting. And Vaush was like, well, the people that were chasing him, they thought they were justified in attacking him. And then my question was, well, hold on. Let's say that you believe that you're morally in the right and people are chasing you and they're going to potentially kill you or cause you serious bodily harm. Do you have a right to defend yourself? And Vaush, like, very confidently was like, no, I don't think you do have a right to defend yourself. Like, that's just not okay. You have to, like, hope that, just pray that they don't do anything bad to you. And so the example that I ran with was like, well, hold on. Let's say, so, like, there are videos of, like, a black guy is running, from 5 rednecks in a truck or whatever. Like, do you think a black guy should just submit himself to the will of, like, the people chasing him? And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, that would be, like, the most moral thing to do. And I'm like,
what?
One, when he was on the ground, I think shows that the guy's not, like, a crazy sociopathic murderer.
The second shooting, he was literally laying on his ass, firing shots at people 20 feet away who weren't even moving towards him.
Hold on. Can somebody please link the video so that we can watch it? Have you watched that video?
I mean, I've watched, I think, that video, yeah.
Can somebody link the second video so that we can watch it together? Because I have no idea what the fuck you are talking about. Hold on.
The last shot he fired was on this person who looks like he was running to his side. Definitely wasn't 20 feet away. I misremember that part. I acknowledge that.
Okay, so every single person he shot was literally within arm's reach of him, which is a surprising amount of restraint given the circumstances, in my opinion. Because I think that you have made this, the thing on like mob rule, I can't believe that you think that. There's no way that you do.
Do you not feel I've applied a consistent standard where I think it's more moral to just submit yourself to the mob than it is to just kill everyone who comes for you? If I've submitted a consistent standard, I don't think it's fair for you to accuse me of being in bad faith.
It is consistent. Maybe that's how people feel when they argue against me and I'm consistent in something. Maybe you genuinely do believe this. I guess it's possible, but I'll be super curious in the future because I can think of a lot of scenarios that are really sweatsy where fucking black dudes have been lynched by white people thinking they were in the right, where saying that like, but then you even said that earlier. Maybe the black guy should just submit himself to get arrested and then they can hash it out of court.
Wait. If people are coming to arrest the black guy, then I think that he should submit to arrest rather than gunning down a bunch of unarmed white people who are coming from.
Not submit to arrest, but like a mob of white people approaching him.
It really depends on the context there and how legitimate the lethal threat is. I do believe that. I think that there's a lot of nuance there.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Yeah, so and that's where the meme.
Self-defense is like if you think that someone is like not even that they're going to kill you. For example, if you think someone's going to come and chop off your arm,
sure,
you are completely justified in shooting them dead on the spot.
Yeah, like, maybe I am.
This is, but how? I don't understand the argument against that.
There is. I mean, you can go back and watch. I don't want to misrepresent this video, but I felt like most of my takes regarding self-defense aren't. Now, self-defense of property gets a little bit different, but we weren't even talking about that.
Yeah, I think I heard something about you. You think that you'd be justified in shooting someone if they were going to take something that you own.
Yeah, which is but none of the Rittenhouse stuff had anything to do with property though, so it's not even relevant with.
I will say I do disagree with that, but I do agree with you on when it comes to self-defense of the body, like absolutely there is, and because there are some great papers on self-defense. I mean, Philippa Foot has an amazing paper on, Judith Jarvis Thompson, like where examines like a string of like 10 different cases of self-defense. And even if someone, for example, like say someone's coming at you with a car and they can't stop the car, someone has put it in gear, for example, or they've been brainwashed, so they're actually innocent and their intent was not to kill you, you are still justified in killing them, right? Even if they are actually innocent. If your life is on the line, you are justified in killing them. I mean, all things being equal, like for example, if they have the cure to cancer, rule out those cases.
Sure. Yeah, without getting into some crazy math. Yeah.
You are absolutely justified in self-defense, and I don't understand how anyone could argue against that plausibly under any really coherent moral system.
Sure. Yeah. I don't think anybody. Well, I don't know over the Renest. I don't know. That's a whole other thing. There's a lot of like political ideology and narratives that are kind of wrapped up on both sides. So it's hard to like figure out like, do you actually mean this, or do you think this is bad? Because like the thing that was kind of irritating me was that like during that argument, I don't know how you feel about this, but like, so even if we say that maybe you shouldn't be able to defend your property, maybe I think that most people should be in agreement that it's probably okay to defend your livelihood, because we can probably start to draw or extend like some amount of like bodily harm out of that. So for instance, let's say there's a family-owned business and you use that business to support your family of four, and without that business, like you won't be able to afford insulin for your child or something, right? Like at that point, it starts to get hazier, or at the very least, we say like, yeah, you can probably defend your property here. Do you agree with that or no?
Yeah, so like it's obviously going to be sort of a spectrum.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Like if someone's going to take your life-saving medicine,
yeah, somebody's going to rob your insulin, yeah.
Yeah.
But like the weird thing that I was running into
TV, I mean, no.
Yeah, sure, I understand. Yeah. The weird thing I was running into with a lot of lefties was them saying like literally like you can never ever defend property, even if it's your businesses. You should just wait for the insurance to give it back or whatever, which is strange given how many people will never accept the same argument for like health insurance. But that take was really bizarre to me, because I know that history is littered with examples of minorities using firearms sometimes to fight back against oppressive people. The most famous example that I would give would be the LA riots, when the Koreans were on top of their stores defending their stores. And the idea that it would be morally impermissible, for them to defend themselves, or like would it have been morally impermissible for the Jewish people to defend themselves during is it Kristallnacht? I don't know how you pronounce it. In leading up to Nazi Germany and everything, would that have been morally impermissible for them to defend themselves? Like that seems hard for me to believe.
Dakota Access Pipeline or
Sure.
Wounded Knee. I mean, cases of literal treaty. Would these same people then say that these people shouldn't be able to? What about like literally defending your land and defending your right to be like a sovereign nation? Are you then? I don't even understand.
It bothers me because I feel like that's pretty non-controversial, but because it's wrapped up in a political narrative, people all of a sudden have a much different opinion on it, which is frustrating for me. Yeah.
But like but it even is a political narrative for me to sit here and say, I mean, colonized nations should be able to defend themselves against colonizers. I mean, that's just a basic tenet of anti-imperialism. But these same people are then going to say that that's not true. I don't understand how you can be a socialist and simultaneously say that indigenous populations or oppressed minorities aren't justified. Like, what do they think about the fucking Black Panthers?
Yeah, exactly. That was another example I gave up. Yeah, because some people were like, you should never bring guns to any protest ever, and it's like, wait, really? Because I feel like when we saw Black people walking, even recently, not like the Black Panthers of like the 50 years ago or whatever, but like the Black Panthers or some of the Black movements today that carry guns in protests. I think we usually celebrate that. Real quick, someone is saying, careful, during Kristallnacht, Jews were murdered and attacked. I know that during Kristallnacht there were Jews that were murdered and attacked, but I think the primary goal of Kristallnacht was just destruction of tons of Jewish property and not sending police forces over to defend it. I know there were Jews that were killed that night, but I think the big goal was like destruction of Jewish like businesses and property and stuff.
Yeah. I'll give probably the most extreme example that I can think of in terms of self-defense. Like when under FDR, or maybe it was Truman, they constructed a bunch of dams in the Missouri Basin that in turn caused floods that wiped out like 98% of agricultural lands of various Sioux nations. I mean, this was a case where tens of thousands of families were literally displaced from their homes and people were sent into spiraling poverty. Yeah. I truly believe that those people would have been fully justified in shooting the people who were constructing that day. Or maybe actually that becomes questionable, because it was the Army Corps, and are they contracted and obligated to? Then you get into that controversy. But like,
oh yeah,
it's
is
clear
it
that-
ever moral or ethical to kill an enemy soldier that lives in an authoritarian regime? That kind of question, basically, right? Like how much?
it does become a lot more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But it
I will say it's very funny though that socialists, who I thought one of their biggest contentions had to do with material conditions, are so anti-property defense when they talk about literally killing wealthy people and capital owners in order to secure their property. That's kind of funny to me, but
yeah, and saying I don't know how you reconcile this with like with the idea of like you being evicted and the whole conception of like getting rid of landlords, because there seems to be a lot of inconsistency here with saying that no self-defense in any case is justified, while simultaneously saying that we need to rebel and fight against the oppressors. It's just, I don't think that these are two things that you can simultaneously say. Like, do they also then think that I think this is just a case of Vaush and other people. It became politically attractive for these people to jump on board, attacking Rittenhouse because of the Black Lives Matter protests. And then once they said that they wanted, that they think he was a horrible person, that you just have to continually double down on it.
basically, you're committed to the opinion. Otherwise, you're basically like a white nationalist yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I don't get involved in those. I mean, this is the whole problem with people grifting and virtue signaling on Twitter, is that you have to be exactly what everybody wants, or all of a sudden you are
A literal Nazi,
which
is a little bit silly, but
which is unfortunate. But with Vaush, I mean, I think it's genuinely an issue of I don't know if he's like greedy, or if he's going after money, or if he genuinely believes that like socialism is the correct thing. I don't know how to reconcile all of his behavior.
Well, and another problem too is that he almost turns into like a type of, I don't know if you say like I was gonna say like Descartes' demon, maybe not necessarily that extreme, but like
How do you know you're capable of making reasonable assessments about such a thing?
So what if we're going Descartes' evil demon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am actually.
if somebody tells you that they are willing to lie to you to achieve some end, like that actually becomes a person that is like incompatible with your existence. Like you can't actually do anything with that person ever, right? Because like if like being extreme, if there was ever a point where this person thought that like say like killing you would be beneficial to them, like I would expect them to do it, And it's like, well, holy shit, wait, how do I even function in society with a person like that? Like that seems like very difficult.
Yeah, I don't know either. I feel like it's at a sudden. Well, that's why I'm not gonna like. That's why I guess I won't talk to him anymore. I see absolutely zero point in ever having a conversation with him again, because I feel like I see him for what he is, and it's someone that isn't actually going to have a discussion with you in legitimate good faith. I mean, I felt like that about you for a while.
Depending on what we were arguing about, yeah.
Yeah, well, we were talking about pipelines, and I just engaged in the conversation very poorly. And as a result, and then I went on Twitter, and that really bothered you. That was the crux of that.
Sure.
But I actually think you are capable of having good faith, charitable conversations. But with someone like Vaush, I don't see any sort of attempt to actually try to figure out what is the correct position. He has already predetermined what is going to work for him, and anything that falls outside of those bounds are basically incompatible for him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's locked into this position, and he can't budge from it.
Sure.
So,
and even like to be clear, like to just because people are gonna probably quote the fuck out of this, I personally don't think that everybody has to become like a fucking philosophy master. I'm definitely not a philosophy master.
Oh, no,
but like
I don't think that either.
Yeah. But if you're gonna start making some like incredibly outlandish claims related to like especially ethics, like I think you need to start exploring some really good justification for those. If people could take what you're saying and run to really scary places with them, I think that you have some responsibility there to do a lot of due diligence for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's sort of what I said so incoherently and ineffectively 2 years ago on stream, which is that your responsibility to engage in these topics and to do reading and basic moral philosophy scales exponentially the more impact that you have on people. So, like with Vaush, like when I first said that to him, he had like I think less than 10,000 subscribers on YouTube or something, right?
Yeah.
And now look at him, and he's pulling in. He has an enormous influence. Like he's fucking everywhere on Reddit. He just keeps popping up, and he is having an enormous influence. And usually, I imagine on teenagers, right? That's going to be his biggest demographic, and these are the people who are most likely to just buy in to what their favorite content creator is saying.
Yeah.
And that means that your responsibility to make sure that what you are saying is correct and true is just so fucking important. And it also, these are the same people that get mad at people like fucking Ben Shapiro and Nick. It's the same fucking thing. And that's why perspective philosophy says they are basically like a Nazi. It's because they operate under the same methods. They are not interested in reaching out to what is true and what is good. They're reaching out to what is convenient to them and their own arbitrary ends. And that is just the biggest fucking, that's the thing that pisses me off. So,
yeah.
But again, I don't know what really you do. I feel like, what are you going to do about this? The people who have bought in are already bought in.
I'm trying to be more the 2021 is like the year where I'm trying to be more rhetorically effective. So hopefully I'm doing a good job at illustrating like I'm trying to spend more time on that, like, because I would kind of take for granted that like, well, this is bad, obviously. That would kind of be like the way that I would approach these things. But now I'm trying to be more like, well, this is bad because of these reasons, right? So I've tried to focus a lot recently on like explaining like, this is why consistency is important. I had a whole breakdown of just like that sentence today of like, without consistency, you necessarily fall into absurdity. And for me personally, I believe that morality is downstream from epistemology. Even if you believe that morality is upstream from epistemology, you still need some sort of like consistent view of things, because if you don't have consistency, literally you can make any statement whatsoever. So I try to give like a really simple explanation, like this is the principle of explosion. If we allow contradiction in sets of rules, we can literally assert the positive or the negation of any statement. Like it's just absolutely ridiculous to do this. Like we can't do this, guys. Like you can't have meaningful conversations. This happens. So I'm trying to engage in that more. Yeah.
I mean, but again, this is something that you find out by even watching a 30-minute video on basic logic, right? You find out why consistency matters because of the principle of explosion.
Yeah.
And if you were to take even 30 minutes out of your life just to figure out what follows from the conclusions or from the arguments that you are giving, you would find this out. But these people just, I mean, it was my issue with Hassan as well.
Yeah.
I think with Hassan, well, I don't want to be mean, but I think Vaush is more, because like I don't think like Hassan is actually a bad person. I think he actually believes in what he believes, and he's just trying his best to achieve it. I don't necessarily think there's malicious intent there, but I think at the same time, he has his domain and he doesn't want to step outside of that.
Sure.
And you know what? Fine. I don't see him making all of these moral arguments on stream, so it's not.
He seems like, as much as he would hate being called a demagogue, I would say he's a demagogue, but at least he seems to like kind of stick pretty squarely in that domain. Like I think Hassan does a lot of dumb shit related to news and politics, but I don't think I'm ever going to turn on Hassan's stream and hear him say something like, well, I'm a consequentialist, therefore anybody should be able to lie about anything, and as long as it serves my political end, it's okay. Like I don't think Hassan would ever make a statement like that. I think he'd say some shit like morality and ethics is for fucking nerds. Like I'm just talking about whatever. Then and be like, okay, well, whatever.
Did he actually say, oh my God, like seriously, just read like an intro book. Like there are so easy rebuttals to this, which is like, why call it doesn't even make sense. Just be a rule utilitarian, right? How is lying always permissible if it
Well, and that's kind of what I would say, because it's like the easy example that I try to give in result of this is like the very first time you've ever thought about consequentialism, and you're like, oh yeah, like what if we kill one people and then we save two people? Like that would be awesome. And it's like, okay, that would be awesome in one off event, but like let's just think for 1 second, what would society look like? Like you're gonna have institutions pop up of like bounty hunters murdering people for their kidneys. You're never gonna have a person go to their hospital ever again, because they're always going to be murdered immediately to save another person, because that would be like what's morally righteous. Like everything would become chaos. Like, so maybe on its face this seems like a good idea, but if we think for like one step ahead, obviously this idea would be fucking horrible. Same thing with like lying is permissible to sell an end. Like, okay, well, like let's think of this let's think like for 2 seconds and not 1 second. Like what would happen to society if that actually took place? Like obviously things would be chaotic as fuck, right?
I mean, the question I would, because I mean, there's a very, I don't know if I'm convinced by it, but in response to this idea of like quantifying pleasure and quantifying pain, there's a paper, I think his name is Tarek, and he basically argues in a case of, you know, like just imagine the trolley problem and you have one person on one track and 5 people on the other. His conclusion is that you should flip a coin when deciding which whether you should pull the lever or not. And I mean, I'm not convinced by that. I reject that conclusion.
Wait, what is his argument? Why?
Right. Well, I know it's quite surprising. And again, I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but I think there's a grain of truth in it.
Well, I'm curious what the argument is, because this is literally like the fucking Joker. Like, well, if you flip a coin, it's always fair. Whatever happens, happens.
Like I said, I reject the conclusion, but his argument is basically if it's to sort of reject this third person view of morality and recognize that from their perspective, from like, let's say his name is Jim, okay? And Jim, let's say, I'm trying to think of the example he gives. Like, let's say someone has a life-saving medicine. His name is Jim, and he needs to take it in order to live. And he needs to take it in its full dose. But there are another 5 people, and they take 1/5 of that dose, and they get to live. If you were to ask Jim, you should, Jim, would you be willing to give up your dose of medicine so that these 5 other people should live? The question is, should Jim actually do that from his perspective? Are we justified in insisting that Jim gives up his medicine for the sake of these 5 other people?
Yeah, and this feels like, to use the word that Vaush has fallen in love with, this almost feels like it would be supererogative. Supererogative? Fuck. Like something that wouldn't be an obligation, but it would be good for you to do, I guess. It'd be nice if you did it.
I've never heard that word before in my life.
Yeah, I think I've heard it used one time, but it's like Vaush's favorite word. Wait, shit.
Supererogative?
Supererogatory, I think. It's not supererogatory. I think it's supererogatory. Or no, it might be supererogatory.
Okay,
Fuck.
well, I mean, we
Basically,
call that you just being a good Samaritan, I think is the...
It's supererogatory. That sounds like erotic, but supererogatory. But basically, the idea is that it's good, but it's not morally required to be done. I've never heard of this before, but like Vaush used this word like a million times. Yeah.
Okay, I do know, actually, this is a term that I do know. This is one of those cases where I've seen the word like in books and stuff, but I've never actually said it out loud. So this is actually how you say that. Okay, that is a word, but it is a bit, I don't know why he's saying it. It's not like it's a common, yeah, that's just a weird thing to say over and over again, but whatever. But yeah, in that case, do you think, like, let's say you're Jim, are you going to give up the 5, or would you give up the dose?
I don't think, I think I would use that expression here. I think it would be really good if you did. I don't know if I could ever have a society where I would morally obligated? Yeah. I don't think I could have somebody morally obligated to do it. That's a tall order. I don't know if that's a fair expectation to place.
Okay, and so Tarek's argument is, well, if Jim, actually, let's say, okay, I'm Gavin, right? And Jim is my friend. And the question is, well, if Jim isn't obligated to give up his dose and I have the dose instead, why am I obligated to give it to the 5 people when Jim isn't?
Wait, why would you be obligated to give it? Wait, what do you mean? Can you say that again?
So we have the 2 scenarios. We have the one scenario where Jim is the one who controls the dose. He either takes it himself or he gives it to 5 people.
Yep.
The second scenario is where there's now a third person, me, Gavin. I have the dose. I can either give it to Jim or give it to the 5 people. And Tarek's claim is, well, if Jim is not morally obligated to give it to the 5 people and that he can take it himself, why would Gavin, myself, be obligated to give it to the 5 people instead of Jim?
Oh, I think Gavin, this seems... Yeah, I don't know. There must be a counter to it, because to me the answer obviously would be that because Gavin's not making any type of personal sacrifice.
Well, let's say, what if Jim is like my husband? Like we can really, what is so special about that relationship that overrides
I don't know if
the
it's
whole
in terms
point
of
is the
special
thrust
about the.
of it.
I guess maybe I'm not making a moral argument. Maybe I'm making. I might be appealing. I might literally just making an emotional argument. In my head, what I'm doing is I'm actually because I'm trying to consider this hypothetical. I'm actually trying to flip this around. Instead of thinking about myself, I'm trying to think about my son. So let's say that there was 1 dose of medicine I could give to my son, or 5 doses to other children. I would always pick my son, just 1,000,000%. And in terms of placing an expectation on another person, I would expect them to do the same thing. If they could run into a burning building and save either their child or 5 other children, I would always expect them to save the 5 other children. Or I'm sorry, I would always expect them to save their child. I would never place the expectation on somebody. They're like, oh, well, what you should be doing is saving the 5 other kids. But if a firefighter was running into a building, they're not like sacrificing anything by saving 1 or 5. They should always probably pick the greater option. But I don't know if that's a moral or ethics argument, or if I'm just appealing to some intuitive emotional thing there.
Well, I think what the argument's trying to get at, and this is where I think there's a grain of truth, because I reject the conclusion. I mean, I think you are morally obligated. If you are a stranger, if Jim is a stranger and the 5 people are strangers, I think you're obligated to give it to the 5 people.
Yeah, of course.
Flip a coin. But I think what is true is that people seem to think that, everything has to be done from a purely third-person perspective. Where you're just weighing these arbitrary numbers against each other, and that's how you go about making, it's the utilitarian calculus. But that seems to be very divorced from a lot of positions and a lot of decisions that we consider to be perfectly legitimate, which would be, for example, Jim taking it himself. So if you were to press Vaush, actually, no, I bet Vaush would bite the bullet because that's what he always does. But if you were to ask the average, first year utilitarian student, most would probably say, no, Jim should be able to take it himself. And therefore, utilitarianism in its purest form has to be false, right? I mean,
and this is why. Okay, listen, when you met me last, I said I hated meta ethics, but now I'm kind of wondering about normative ethics, okay? Because I feel like these systems can become so stretched and arbitrary that they can morph into themselves. Because I think what a utilitarian was doing, if he really wanted to fight for his system, what the utilitarian would do is he would say, well, actually, this is still utilitarianism, but the utility of his individual life, he would measure for himself as being worth more than the utility of a stranger's life. So it's actually still utilitarianism to save yourself instead of 5 other people, because you're worth 10 utils and every other person is worth 1 util or something like that, right? Okay,
but if we actually look at that from let's say that the 5 people, let's just add on to the situation and say that you actually know that their 5 combined utilities in life and the impact that they're going to have on other people will be greater than yours. That doesn't seem to change anything.
I would actually argue that I think it does change anything. Or I'm sorry, it does change something. So for instance, here is something. So I'm being very emotional when I answer this question, okay? If somebody were to say, do you want to save the life of your child or 4 other children? I truly don't think I could say, sorry, Nathan, you've got to die. I don't think I could do it. But if somebody were to have would you save Nathan or your entire school full of children? That would be a lot harder. I would have a much harder time saying, sorry, I'm going to go with my kid over the 1,000 other kids in his school.
100%.
Yeah. So it does seem like there is some, now if we want to say utilitarian, well, my kid's utility to me is much higher than the utility of other children. But there is some threshold, there is some number of people that once it's surpassed, okay, I can't at this point make this decision, and same thing with self-sacrifice too. If I had to sacrifice myself to save 4 other people in a car, I don't know if I could do it. But if it was me and there was a building full of people and for somehow I could run downstairs and pull over, and if it was between me dying or 10,000 people die, that becomes a lot harder. Fuck, I feel a lot worse about the decision, Yeah, but I'm appealing a little to intuition here, but yeah.
Well, but this is the thing about this is why I don't really like normative ethics anyways in the first place, is because that's what you find, is that it's all appeals to intuition. You read any of these papers by any famous normative philosopher who aren't writing in meta ethics, and it's almost always oh, well, I feel this way. And so
in terms of measuring, because there's no philosopher, no person, even in economics, measuring utility is literally impossible.
No, but in general, in normative ethics, that's how a lot of people argue, which is to say, this case seems wrong to me, so I'm going to reject the theory.
Sure.
Or this case seems a little bit more plausible to me intuitively, so I'm going to say that this theory is correct. That's how a lot of normative ethicists argue, and I think that's a really stupid way of going about arguing. And that's why I really like Kant, because Kant grounds it out in, or attempts to ground it out in actual necessity. It's a necessary condition, of our experience, that we have certain reasons that we ought to follow, right? Instead of just an appeal to, well, this case seems like it wouldn't be correct, so let's see what follows next. Or I reject this, Elizabeth Anscombe. Elizabeth Anscombe responded to a paper, I think by Jonathan Bennett, attacking like a hyper form of deontology, because Elizabeth Anscombe thought that it was immoral it's immoral to kill anybody ever, even in the case of preventing
self-defense or preventing further harm or something. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, she I think she was an awful person. But she wrote a response to Jonathan Bennett's paper, basically criticizing her position, which just said, this doesn't seem right to me, and that's all. It's literally like 30 words long, and it was published in a peer-reviewed paper.
Okay. Based.
And yeah, that's how a lot of these people argue, and I think that shows a detraction of, or it shows an issue that exists within that. But people have really moved on from that. People don't usually argue like that anymore. It's been the advent of reasons in metaethics. Everything is about reasons now. Do you have a reason to do this? If so, is that an objective reason? How does reasoning structure the way that we interact with the world? And and then you take it to epistemology too, right? Epistemic reasons. So, I mean, I think that's the way that you go about it. But again, you're not going to learn this in a philosophy 101 course. And I mean, I'm not expecting someone like Vaush to go and read all the metaethical literature, but just a basic familiarity with ethical systems and the common arguments against this will, at the very least, improve your critical thinking skills, so you don't fall into various blunders. And it seems like people just aren't willing to put in the effort to do that, and that's I don't understand. Like, what other things does Vaush have to do? I don't know. It'd be one thing if he was working a full-time job or something, but I mean, he could do a philosophy stream where he just reads philosophy, and he would still rake in a ton of money, enough to support himself, right? But I mean, I say the same thing to you, but I've talked to you about that before. But I think it's worse in his position, because it's
makes some more outlandish claims and stuff.
Yes. Yeah. But again, I don't know what is this. That's what I want to ask you, is what is the solution for dealing with actors like him? Is the solution to just go on fucking debate panels with him and yell at him? And
well, I think it has to be you have to do this rhetorically. You have to make their position be persuasive to other people and make it seem abhorrent. That's all you can do.
Yeah, the issue is that, I mean, people will just readily buy in to, if you don't have background in philosophy, it can seem like there's nothing wrong with epistemic anti-realism, because for a lot of people, it doesn't affect people's everyday. A lot of people think philosophy is just useless. Well,
and also it's easier to buy into that argument too, because it feels good and it lets you basically get away with anything you want. It's a pretty based position. If I say I'm an epistemic anti-realist, I can literally say anything I fucking want to.
Yes, exactly.
Which is awesome. So
yeah. And so the question is, how do you combat that? I mean, the way that's combated in philosophy, for example, is those positions just aren't taken seriously. I mean, they are in the fringes of philosophy where that's actually being studied, right? In higher level meta-epistemology, right? But you could never write a paper talking about consumption under capitalism and whether it's moral or not, and then justify it by saying, well, consumption under capitalism is okay or is not okay, therefore I'm able to do whatever I want because someone else is going to do it. And ultimately the reason why is because I'm an epistemic anti-realist, right? You would never be published because it's such a stupid thing, a stupid argument.
Sure.
And that's how there's self-regulation in that respect. But I mean, those are people that are trained in philosophy. So the question is, how do you take those criticisms and those responses and and
distill them for it. Yeah, I mean it's hard.
Distill that for an everyday audience.
And the academic communities in general just say it's not worth their time. That's why you see something like, for instance, like race realists. It's taken so long for anyone academically to pay attention to any of that because they're just like, this isn't really worth our time. And it's like, okay.
Yeah,
well,
or I mean, even like anti-vaxxers, right? I mean, they don't get published really. I mean, there are sporadic, weird one-off publications, right? But they're not taken seriously. And that people will say that I'm appealing to authority, right? But I mean, it's just the same thing as something like an anti-vaxxer. If the entire scientific community thinks that this is not something worth considering, then it doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% false, but you should take like a long, hard look at whether you want to uphold that position.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that's an important feature of philosophy that I think people should respect more. But everyone thinks that they can do philosophy, and everyone can do philosophy. It's just
the problem is everybody does philosophy, whether you know anything about it or not, because everything is kind of an exercise in that.
Yeah, everything sort of trickles back to it, so it's it's difficult. And I mean I tried for like a couple years, and I just got called pretentious, and so I don't know what the solution necessarily is. And I mean, I wish I could say people like Philosophy Tube, but I've never liked Philosophy Tube. I've never liked the content. I think it's very shallow. It doesn't engage enough with the material. It often can actually not represent a lot of the positions correctly. And then I mean the recent shit with, oh my god, why would you not show your fucking income? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, she still isn't doing that, right?
Yeah, she released like a detailed breakdown of her expenses, and there wasn't a single. Well, she said it was, but there wasn't a single number listed. It was just really funny. She was just like, I spent a. Well, you'd have to go. I can't. And honestly, it sounds like I'm making this up, but she was like, here's a detailed breakdown of everything I do, and she's like, well, I pay my editor some, I paid for costumes, and like, yeah, that cost me a lot of money, and then I make a decent amount of money, and that was like her detailed breakdown. It was like hilarious. Yeah.
What do you mean? But she didn't say how much she was paying?
No, she didn't give any numbers for anything anywhere. Yeah.
That's not a breakdown.
I know, that's why it was funny. Yeah.
Okay. And then well, it's hard to criticize people like that because people will get very angry if you criticize people like Philosophy Tube or ContraPoints.
Sure.
But I mean, I've never been a big fan of. I don't know. I don't like this idea of making philosophy entertainment, I guess.
I mean, I think there is a place for a lot of like pop science or pop philosophy. It's just you have to be careful not to be so reductive that you're misrepresenting the material, right?
Exactly. And I think that if you put more effort into like really engaging, I don't think it's a coincidence that the most popular the most prominent popularizers of philosophy are engaging with, well, I don't know. I'll just say you're not seeing a lot of popularizers engaging with anything that doesn't fall into like
popular political narratives, or
yes, it's often Marxist thought, it's often rooted. And I mean, look, I am a socialist, and I think that stuff is very valuable, but I don't think it's a coincidence that sometimes it's quite shallow, and it doesn't feel like it's been engaged with. Like, it feels like stuff I could read in my introductory lecture in continental, philosophy.
Yeah. So the distillation of this in a single point is, I would guesstimate that literally less than 5% of all content creators that are lefties could even explain like what the labor value theory is, like unironically, which is like the very. I think when you're reading Capital, it's literally like fucking 10 or 15 pages in. Like, you immediately start to get into like the relations between labor and everything. And like, I think that less than 5% of content creators could even just tell you what that is, which is like step zero.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that always annoys me is, Marxists who will say, oh, I've read Marx. But then the issue is how you go about justifying Marxism. And I think the most prominent answer to that would be like through Hegel, right? And these people have never read Hegel, so they don't actually know how to justify, because that shit is hard. It's fucking hard. But instead they do the shallow stuff and they get the material analysis, right? Well, the fucking material analysis doesn't matter for your ethical system. You're not referencing Marx to justify what you ought to do, because Marx is not really laying out that type of normative system. It's mostly a descriptive framework of economic theory, a lot of which turned out to be false. But then people built upon that. And developed normative systems within that. And then that's what's used to justify socialism. But no one ever goes beyond just reading, the Communist Manifesto. I mean, Vaush has never read Marx. And yeah, it's crazy to me that people start to identify themselves with that branding, but don't even engage with the material at all, But again, I don't know what the solution, like you say, you have to rhetorically show how their arguments are poor and lead to crazy solutions, but I don't know how you measure the effectiveness of that. I don't know how you determine.
By Reddit threads and subscribers, basically. It's frustrating, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Right. Obviously, I wanted to bring up veganism, but I also want to talk, if you're game, about socialism a little bit, and Vaush, because I spoke with Vaush as well after your debate with him. We had like a weird discussion, and I don't think he's a socialist really, like at all. So I don't know. So whatever you want to talk about first, we can go down that line.
Whatever, you know what? Whatever you want to do, go for it. I'm eating, so I'm in a good mood, so.
Okay, well, since you're eating, we'll not go veganism because it's probably not vegan. So, so I'll just go Vaush first because it's probably the easiest thing to talk about. So I spoke to Vaush after his debate with you. He thinks he was consistent. I don't think he was. I think his position was changing throughout the debate, aligning closer to yours, so that it basically made him sound like he was agreeing with you the whole time. I basically probed into his framework, and ultimately it's founded upon a level of epistemic anti-realism. He called himself an absurdist, if you know the philosophy of Albert Camus.
Yeah.
So he doesn't believe in truth. He doesn't believe in any sort of metaphysical reality, and he argued that he was consistent because his interpretation of his position never changes. So he said look, there's no such thing as reality and whether he was actually consistent or not. So
yeah, I think the problem is that I think he's listened to some things that I've said, and then he takes those in a really weird direction. I don't think he's truly an anti-realist, or I'm sorry, I don't think he's truly an epistemic anti-realist. I don't think anybody is. I don't think that's a possible position to have. But
well, he seems that that's what he kind of. I think it's a rhetorical tactic more than anything. You know,
exactly.
Get
That's
out of
what
jail
I mean.
free.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of jail free card. And I think that he is, in some respects, in terms of existentialism, and he talked about having existential issues. So I think that he's probably just been he's probably had some shit in his life. He's went down the existentialist route, and then Albert Camus basically says, we've got to imagine Sisyphus happy, push the rock up the hill and smile about it, and that's how you're going to have to deal with your life. And I think that's probably what he's going down.
Sure, I'm sympathetic to that position, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to it as well. I think that if we use that to justify I don't want to say stupidity, but ungrounded positions, then we're going to end up in a bad state. So what I found anyway when I probed into it was essentially that he said that he basically said that everything was subjective, and that ultimately it rests on his interpretation of his position. And so when I said, well, this is why you were changing through the debate, because you weren't consistent throughout, because there was nothing to ground your position, he was like, well, it's all about my interpretation, so I was consistent with my interpretation. So he basically annihilated consistency. So trying to defend his position, he rather than biting the bullet and just saying you know what, actually, that Twitter take that I said billionaires, that's a choice, that was actually a based lefty take. I'm going to stick by that one, and I was wrong to not condemn them. He instead was no, I'm right in both times, and there's no such thing as truth. And I just think that's a bit bullshit, to be honest. And I think it's fundamentally unsocialist. So I'm just going to explain why. So socialism is essentially a theory, a meta-narrative built on the philosophy of people like Karl Marx, Noam Chomsky, Slavoj Žižek, other socialist philosophers, right, who try to explain, why workers should own the means of production and what a fair system is, right?
Okay.
Well, he rejects all of those and accepts postmodernism. Now,
I don't know how you can possibly be a postmodern socialist or Marxist, but okay, go ahead.
Exactly. He is literally the lefties have memed the shit out of Jordan Peterson for this. You know, you can't be a postmodern neo-Marxist. This is absolutely stupid. Like the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But that is actually Vaush. So it's one of those things where it's like Vaush actually postmodern neo-Marxist confirmed, which is like. I don't know, man. Like, how am I supposed to deal with that?
I don't think, to be clear, and I don't know if there's like a philosophy brain or whatever thing, but like, I don't think Vaush actually believes that. I don't know if you understand that or if you believe that, but like, I don't think Vaush actually believes these things. It's just, these are the positions that he has kind of committed himself to hold like his, like way down the road positions. Like you want to have this belief and this belief, so then you kind of like, you read enough philosophy jargon to throw some terms together and sound like you've justified. I don't think he's actually like an epistemic anti-realist or like that hard committed to postmodernism. Like there's no way, no real human being is, right? Because if you were to sit down, if you were to lock him up in a room and then show him all the logical ends of everything that he's saying, like it would be absurd and in not a fun way, like reading Albert Camus, but in a horrible way, like somebody could kill you and you can't really complain about it. Like it would be just absolute chaos, right?
Well, yeah, but then he just relates it all to power, and he goes down like the Foucauldian kind of route. But he did accept that we'll have to. Like, he started to come around in the end and say, look, we'll have to pretend as if it is real.
Yeah,
almost.
Which is more or less my position. Yeah.
But that would be fine, except like even if he went like fictionalist, that would be fine. But then he couldn't bullshit and say like, oh well, everything's like a matter of subjectivism and all that, because then he's had to make the assumption that everything's real. So I think you're right in that it's a rhetorical tactic.
Sure. Like if somebody were to say, like, could Vegeta beat Goku in a fight, and somebody were to say, well, no, it's not possible. A valid response to that isn't, well, it's all fiction, so he could. You would have to work within the rules of the world. You'd assume that like everything in that world is real, and then you'd work from there. Yeah, that's basically my position. Yeah.
And as we know, Vegeta would never beat Goku in a fight, and that's just the way that would work.
Well, only because of Goku's plot armor, but Vegeta deserves.
Exactly. It's just like unbeatable.
Vegeta is to Goku what that one guy is to Naruto. I don't remember his name, but it's like whatever the fuck. I've heard enough about him that I can tell he's a Vegeta-like character. It sounds like there's some character in Naruto that wasn't born with all the gifts that Naruto has, but he probably trains harder and does more shit or whatever, but he's always like slightly worse than Naruto because Naruto gets some special bullshit. I don't know. Oh, Sasuke or whatever? Sasuke? That guy. Sounds like it, but... Okay, sorry.
Basically did the same sort of like the meme, that kind of thing in One Punch Man, though, didn't they? With like his apprentice is like this hard training, like fucking robot, like half cyborg, like super serious character, and he just fucking walks up, flicks something, and walks away very sad.
Well,
like, but yeah, absolutely. Like the thing is that like I don't know. I think that Vaush is at the end of the day then bad faith, and I think that's really bad again, because now we've got like this whole thing about misinformation. I watched his video responding to you about misinformation, and it seems that like he doesn't separate misinformation from lying. Like, so
yeah, that was a huge problem that I had when I was watching his video, and this is kind of like a thing that I can't believe this is done in good faith. And people even on his subreddit were posting like, oh, Destiny thinks that it's immoral to lie. Well, then Destiny thinks every single teacher is immoral, because when they teach you Newtonian physics, they're actually lying to you. And it's like, okay, like this is so stupid. Yeah, people don't separate out like making a mistake or being like half truthful for a particular reason, like education, like it's too complicated, and then they equate that with telling intentional falsehoods to like distort something or distort the truth on something to make somebody like, yeah, it's really
exactly. But that's another rhetorical tactic. It goes like he just says, he basically eliminates personal responsibility and says like, I don't know what you're talking about. Only thing that matters is the consequences. And it's like, well, what the fuck is ethics for? Because ethics is about like behavior, and you act as a first person individual in the world. And so if you're actually trying to make a difference, like you don't do it from like some sort of God's eye view where you like control others like puppets. That's somewhat twisted, and like you can't like operate like that. That's just not how it works.
Sure, and then I even push back I don't like his views of consequentialism also seem to be very, very, very naive, because I would consider myself a strict consequentialist, but like I'm not going to commit myself to a position like, oh, well, you should always lie because it might achieve some good end. Because if you universalize that rule and every person lies, then you're pretty fucked. Then everything is fucked. Then you don't actually accomplish any good end.
Yeah, but then he just accuses, like throughout the debate, he was just accusing you of being a deontologist, which is like, I don't even think that you necessarily were being a deontologist. I think like you can understand personal responsibility and be a utilitarian, like absolutely. Like one of the things I tried to bring up with him was Henry Sedgwick, in terms of like standards and principles. He's a utilitarian who argues we need standards and principles to maximize utility.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like
100%. Yeah.
So like I don't know why he does this. I don't think he was all bad in the discussion I had with him, although he was like calling us insufferable, which no doubt, like obviously we'll get on to the veganism in a minute. And I'm a snobby moral realist and stuff like that, but like he goes down this like rhetoric kind of route, and he's very hard on the rhetoric. So I think that maybe it's just all about that. And I guess the reason I'm calling him not a socialist is because when he started in the debate, he basically said to you that it's okay to maximize and accumulate capital within capitalism. And then he moved his position a bit like more to the left and was like, look, as long as you don't make things worse, then it's okay. But it's like, if you are a socialist, you've deemed the system to be morally deficit as a utilitarian. You're saying like, this is negative utility, this is bad. So you perpetuating that system is not socialist. It goes against the ethic that you're trying to like fulfill. So like if you don't become a landlord and enrich yourself on the backs of others, it's like you can't be both a capitalist and a socialist at the same time. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but people just throw that fucking comic at you over and over again.
What one, sorry?
You don't know the comic?
No.
Every time I have a discussion about this with socialists, they throw the comic. It's with the one guy in the well and the other guy carrying the sticks. And he's like, fuck, I don't even remember the original quote. I've seen it memed so many times. But the guy's basically like, oh, like society is pretty fucked, isn't it? And then the guy in the well is like, oh, you're criticizing society, yet you live in it, huh? Like, how stupid, right? And it's obviously meant to show that, like, it's meant to... Well, it's meant to criticize because sometimes conservatives go overboard and like, oh, well, if you're a socialist, shouldn't you be giving away all of your money? Which is obviously a stupid position, right? Like no one would expect it. Yeah.
Tucker Carlson said something stupid like that. It was like something like that. There was like a was it Tucker Carlson? No, it might have been on Fox News, where there was like someone on Fox News basically saying like, why aren't socialist professors working for free?
Probably every single person on Fox has made some statement to the equivalent of that at some point. It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is absolutely stupid. Like of course you need to exist within the system.
Yeah,
but there's a separation between existing in the system and then perpetuating it and enriching yourself.
And there's a spectrum to that, right? Like you don't have to commit yourself fully to it. But like the problem I had with Vaush at the end of the conversation is I asked him, I was like, is there any difference between a socialist and a capitalist living in a capitalist system? Like would those two people act any differently? And he's like, well, no, I imagine they'd act the same. And it's like, okay, well, what the fuck is the point then? Like, that was my
yeah, exactly. What is the point? Absolutely, 100% agree. And like one of the things that I said, like in terms of like, because you say, well, what if you become a landlord and you get like all this property, so you win the lottery, basically, you buy loads of property and then you charge people lower than expected prices for rent. I was like, well, then you're acting as a socialist in capitalism. Like you are undercutting the market for the benefit of the people.
Yeah.
Then you're not putting profit over people, you're putting people over profit, which is essentially the socialist narrative. So I was just like, well, that's fucking socialist. And he's just like, oh, so you can be a landlord then? I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like you just said that you could enrich yourself without considering others. And now you're saying, well, what if this other person was doing a really nice thing for other people, but in the capitalist system? And it's like, well, yeah, that's fucking socialist, man. Like, I don't know what you expect us to say here. Like, I don't know. I feel like he just, like, it's whatever benefits him at the time. And I think that's the whole point of why I related back to the epistemic anti-realism, even if it is a rhetorical tool, because at the end of the day, it's whatever benefits him in the moment. So, yeah. I don't know. I come out of the debate with Vaush with, like, having lost some respect for him, gained some in the sense of his existentialism, but lost some respect for him in terms of a lefty. I don't think that he has any sort of lefty moralism within him. So, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like, if you want, we can move straight on to like why we should be socialists, if you want, and then I'm basically going to say because private property. I think private property demands socialism.
Why do you say that? Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.
You should definitely donate to the Indigenous Gwich'in Standing Committee. I know people don't give a shit about it, but if you like this conversation, put your money there.